I have a confession to make, you guys. I use frequency separation on every single image that I edit. Every single one. That is not an exaggeration. I know some of you heard that and it made you cringe. Like literally, you had a visceral reaction to that. But I promise you, it is possible to use frequency separation and get a good, clean, natural result. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about today. Is how to level up your frequency separation game. I'm Justin Perry. I'm a commercial retoucher, and today I've got 5 tips for you, little easy things to implement in your workflow that will help you get your frequency separation looking next level, looking high end, and using the tool to fix complex image problems that you have in a way that is natural, not filtered, not overdone, not over processed. We want to make a good result. We want a good commercial result, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. So first, a disclaimer before we get into this. This video is not going to teach you how to make a frequency separation action. There are a lot of videos out there talking about that. There are a lot of free actions that you can get, paid actions that you can get. I'm not going to share the action I have because I paid for this, and I feel like that wouldn't be a kind thing to do. But if you Google frequency separation plus median, you can find actions that'll get the job done. So this video assumes that you have an action that you like to use and you have a base understanding of what frequency separation is. And I'm going to walk through ways to kind of use your action better to get a better result. So if you need to go get one, pause right here, go get one. Learn how to kind of get it into your Photoshop and set it up, and then come back and we'll get going. My first tip for you is that the median or Gaussian blur number you put in the box, when you run your action and it asks you to put a number in for your radius, that's actually the most important part of the workflow and gets overlooked by so many people. Let me show you what I mean. So we're in Photoshop and I have a small section of a headshot that we can work on here. So I'm going to go ahead and run my frequency separation action. My action uses median. Your action might use Gaussian blur. I recommend median, but I can talk about that in another video. So regardless, when you run your action, one of the first things that's going to happen is this box is going to pop up and you're going to be asked to put a number in for your radius of your median or your Gaussian blur. So what's happening here is your radius is determining what is going to be on your texture, your high layer. So frequency separation is a separation of the high texture information and the color low texture information. As you increase this number to the right, more information is being moved to your high texture layer. And you can see that because this is what your color low layer is going to look like. Anything not on this layer is going to be on your texture layer. So if we want to move something back to our color layer, we pull this back down. If we want to move something to our texture layer, we pull this up. So the idea here is to increase this number only to the point that your texture disappears. And at that point you want to stop and don't go any further. So for this image, I would maybe move this to around 5 or 6. I'm going to go with 6. At this point, the texture is gone. If we turn off the preview and turn it back on, actually that might be a little high. I'm actually going to go with 5. And really what we're looking for is we just want to see discoloration, not any texture on the skin. And you want to think about this in sections. So you might have to run this a couple different times, and that'll be one of my last tips here. But the main thing is you want to remove all the texture and then stop. So if I were to pull this up to 10, which is what a lot of people do, they go pretty high with this. That's too much. You don't want to go this high. You want to pull this way back down until just the point where your texture begins to disappear. I'm going to go with 5 for now and hit OK. My action runs this twice, and it also throws me in some helper solarized curve layers and some other things that help us be non-destructive. Your action may not be this complex, but it's the same deal. You're going to have your texture high information that looks like this. These are these gray layers, and you have your color low information that will look like this. This is the layer with color in it. So now that we did a good separation and just got our texture up onto our texture layer and left our color on our color layer, we can now start cleaning up our texture. My second tip for you is that you want to clean your texture before you clean your color. Before you even think about color, color does not exist to you. You need to fix your texture first and then clean your color. I'll show you why that's important. The reason we don't want to clean our color first is because color follows texture, right? I mean, think about someone's skin. If they have really deep, pitted skin, then they're probably going to have some discoloration. The discoloration kind of goes hand in hand with that. For the most part, I mean, if we were to completely wipe the color first, which is what a lot of people do, they'll start blending their color layer first, and then that's when it starts to look very overdone and overprocessed because your brain knows that people don't look like this. No one has perfectly even transitions of skin tone and perfectly blurred color and then have texture sitting on top of it. Like that's just not how that works. So first we want to fix our texture issues. And then once we've addressed the texture issues, we can kind of figure out what spots of the color we want to target using frequency separation. And then we can go back and fix the rest using dodge burn and lighting adjustments and targeted color adjustments. But you know, we don't want to just completely come in here with a mixer brush or something and just start mixing color around. So yeah, that's very quickly going to start to look fake. So the way that we want to go about targeting our texture issues is it's always a good idea, especially when you're first getting started doing this, to mark up your image. So I'm just going to go through and circle some of the texture areas that I see have issues. And again, we don't want to make people 100% perfect. People need variation in texture, even for high-end ads and beauty work. You want people to look like people. So we just want to go through it. I'm just sampling some of these areas. Obviously, if this was a real image I was working on, I would go through and clean this up completely, but that's not the point of this. I'm just kind of giving you some tips here. So these are some of the areas I would address. And now that I've got those circled and I know kind of what I'm looking for, I'm going to go back on our texture layer and clean that up. So I go to my texture high layer, and I'm going to pull my stamp tool, set my stamp tool to current layer, not current and below, and we're just going to go in and start to clean some of this texture up. And I'm sampling fairly close to the area I want to clean, and making sure that I don't repeat any textures or repeat any patterns, because you don't want people to start looking repeated. That's also not how people look in real life. So I'm just going to go through very quickly and clean some of these things up. One tip I can share with you while I do this is to use the blend modes that are in your stamp tool and your healing brush tool. So you might not realize, but if you go to mode here, you can change the way that your stamp tool interacts with the layer that you're on. So if I set this to lighten, for example, it will only lighten the areas that are darker than the area that I've sampled. So this will be great if you want to remove freckles or you want to remove like these little hairs that are on his face. It's going to do that without completely destroying all of the underlying texture around it, because it's not going to replace anything that is the same color or lighter. We're just going to be lightening darker areas. So you can see like this spot right here, as I brush over that, it's not going to go away. And that's because that is a lighter area. So it gives you a way to be even more targeted with your cleanup. Let me go through and just kind of do this very quickly. Okay, so that's a pretty good, quick cleanup of just his cheek area. Let me turn this on and off and you can see how much work we've done very quickly. So now you can see that what we have left is our color issues, and that brings me to my next tip for you. Let me first show you the wrong way to fix your skin color, and this is what a lot of people do. They will select a patch of skin, say this patch, they'll go into filter, they go to blur, and say they go into like a Gaussian blur or something, and start blurring that area of skin. And what's going to happen is no matter how you do this, that is going to end up looking bad and fake very quickly, because nobody's skin texture does that, or skin color. Like, it's just, that's just not how skin works. Skin has a lot more variance than that, and it has a lot more nuance to that in the color. So the other way that people might do this is they might grab something like a mixer brush and hop onto their low layer as well and start mixer brushing. And this is going to give you more control for sure. But it's still, I would never use mixer brush on skin. I would only use mixer brush on fabric or anything, hard surfaces, anywhere where we can actually like paint highlights and that sort of thing. Mixer brush is great for that. For skin, I don't recommend it at all. So, okay, how do we actually want to do this? What we want to do is just grab our normal healing brush tool, like not the fancy Content Aware OG healing brush, and come in to small sections of the skin where we see discoloration and fix those sections. So say we smooth that area, we smooth this area, and we're not going to be doing large portions of the image as we do this. This is just going to be targeting spots that we know have issues in order to have clean transitions from, you know, highlight to shadow, and from one part of the skin color to the next. We're looking for blotchiness, we're looking for unevenness, and that's what we're doing. We don't want to just come in here and start wiping things away, because it's going to start to look fake very quickly, and that's kind of probably what you're used to seeing when you think of frequency separation. That's the type of editing that you see frequently, and that's not what we want to do. That is the quicker way to do it, but this is the more appropriate and accurate way. Even if it takes a little bit longer, you're going to get a better result like this. So I'm just sampling around my image, and kind of blending some of these spots that have issues. Now, this obviously isn't going to fix everything, right? Like, this is just a starting point. We would still need to dodge and burn, and use curves and other color correction techniques to actually fix the skin tone, fix the highlights and shadows, and that sort of thing. But this can be a good first step to get your image feeling a little bit more even and consistent. And I know I didn't fix the texture up here, but again, this is just kind of an example. See how that was pushed too far? That's too much, right? Because his skin, it's way too even. So I'm actually going to undo that because, you know, we can all go a little too far here. And I probably am just going to fix even fewer of these spots with this. And again, so before and after, look, very, very subtle change. I mean, you can't even really tell that we did too much on the nose. We want to keep it looking almost, you know, very realistic. We're going for photorealism here. But look at what a big difference this makes on his cheek. And look at how you can't even really tell that we did much. That is the point. You don't want to be able to tell you did anything half the time, especially with higher-end portraits, celebrity portraits, anything like that. Like, your job is to make sure that no one knows you edited anything. So this is kind of the more time-consuming way that we go about doing that. 4 is that you want to work as non-destructively as possible, and that means that you can use additional layers and adjustment layers in between your frequency separation layers. Let me show you how to do that. When I talk about being non-destructive, here's what I mean. Anything that affects color can go in between your color and your high. In fact, I could even put these into folders so that you can really understand this. So this is texture. This is color. Anything that we want to do that will just affect color, can go in between these folders, and anything that's going to affect just texture can go above the texture folder. So for example, let's say I make a new layer here and put it in between our color and texture, and I call this color cleanup. If I go and I set my healing brush tool to current and below, I can then come in and do the exact same thing I was doing before and heal on the color. And you see I'm not affecting the texture because I'm beneath the texture. And the current and below allows me to work on the layers below that. And now I have a way easier time if I want to undo something or go back in time, because I'm not working on my actual color low layer, I'm working on a separate retouch layer. So let me throw that away and I'll show you another example. We could also do our skin tone color correction in between here, the color and texture. So say I want it to do a curves layer and, I don't know, make his skin a little yellower. We could do that here. And let's brighten it a little bit as well. So say we want to do this. This isn't like what I would do as a final, but let's just say that that's what we were trying to accomplish. I can now brush that in using normal masks and everything like that in order to control where that color correction is going, and that will just be affecting our color layer and not our texture that is on top. So you get a really good amount of control over where your color correction is going, and you could go in and also color correct your texture separately. Number 5, last but not least, run frequency separation more than one time. A lot of times people will run one frequency separation and use that separation to clean clothing, skin, or background, whatever it is, right? You need to be running frequency separation as many times as necessary in order to target the specific parts of the photo that you want to edit. Let me show you how to do that really quick using smart objects. A good opportunity to use frequency separation twice on this image would be to get rid of some of the shadows in his shirt after we've cleaned up his skin. So let's say that we're done with skin. It looks good and we're ready to move on. We can use frequency separation to clean up these shadows, because if I were to just make a new blank layer and say I get the healing brush tool and I set it to current and below and I start trying to heal some of these shadows, we're going to run into a bit of a time here making this look good, because we're going to be healing both color and texture, which we don't want to do, because as you do that, you're going to start to the math doesn't really work here in Photoshop to calculate how to blend the texture info as well as the color at the same time. It's going to start to look muddy. So what we would want to do is just fix the underlying color issue, which is the shadow. That can just be brightened while keeping the texture intact. And that's going to look a lot better. So the way we would do that is running frequency separation again, because how I said that the median number is the most important. The median number that's going to work for his shirt is probably not the same median number that will work for his skin, because they're two different materials. We need to separate a different amount of texture out. So the way we do this is I'm going to rename, well, first, if your action does not do this, put all of your frequency separation layers into one folder. And we're going to call that frequency separation skin. Now, once we've got that folder renamed, right-click on it and convert it to a smart object. What this is going to do is put all of those layers into the smart object that we could either double-click on and keep editing as a smart object here, and then when we hit save, it'll update back on our original image. Or what I'm going to recommend doing is, once you've run your frequency separation again, and in this case, I'm going to do this in order to get the shirt texture separated out. Maybe something around there. So I've run my frequency separation again. If we want to get back to our original frequency separation, sorry, I can't talk and type at the same time, I'm renaming that to shirt to keep it separate. If we want to get back to our skin frequency layers, if we right click on that smart object and go convert to layers, boom, it'll give us all of our layers back, and we can, make edits to the skin. The reason you do this and convert to smart object first is because a lot of actions that run frequency sep are going to reference and name layers as they go. So converting to a smart object avoids the action going in and renaming layers that exist or running into errors because you've duplicated layer names. So I always recommend just convert to a smart object and then reconvert back to layers when you're done. And now, because we have a second frequency separation just for his shirt, we can come in and I'm going to grab my healing brush tool and just start cleaning up the shadows. And look at how much better this looks. And the reason we do this, again, is because now Photoshop only has to worry about the shadow color info, not the texture of the shirt. So it's going to be able to calculate this a lot smoother and give you a lot better result. That's going to sit well underneath the original skin texture. So if we wanted to clean this up now, it would be very quick, and it would be we would get clean edges around our brush, and we'd be good to go. So that's really the benefit, and I recommend running frequency separation over and over and over again. A lot of times I'll have 5, 6, 7 frequency separation stacks here within the same image in order to let me clean up different parts of the image, because the background needs a different one than the skin, which needs a different one than the hair, which needs a different one from the clothing. So you might have to do this multiple times, but that's the level of control that you get once you start really paying attention to your media number and start making multiple separations. So I'm not going to completely clean this up right now. You get the idea. I hope that was helpful. I hope that you can take these tips and implement them in your own workflow. That's all I've got for now. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next